There was a moment when arcades, VHS tapes, and anime shops all collided, and almost nobody remembers it. So here's a weird thing that happened in the 90s and early 2000s. Video games started getting anime adaptations, a lot of them. And I'm not talking about Pokemon, which everyone knows, I'm talking about the deep cuts. Let's start with the most iconic one, Street Fighter II Victory, 1995. Street Fighter II was the biggest fighting game in the world. Everyone was playing it in arcades, and someone decided, let's make this into a serious anime series. Not a movie, not an OVA, a 29-episode TV series with an actual story. Here's what made Street Fighter II Victory different. It tried to be a real narrative. Ryu and Ken aren't just fighting random opponents. They're young martial artists traveling the world, learning different fighting styles, getting into trouble. There's character development. There's an actual plot about criminal organizations and underground fighting circuits. Street Fighter II Victory is closer to a martial arts road anime than a fighting game adaptation. That's what makes it work, and what confused fans expecting something else. The animation is solid for mid-90s TV anime. The fight choreography is legitimately good, and they took the game's characters and tried to give them real personalities beyond, here's the guy who throws fireballs. But here's the weird part. It's not really Street Fighter II, the characters are younger. The story doesn't match the games at all. If you're expecting the Street Fighter II you knew from the arcade, this isn't it. That confused a lot of fans, but if you could accept it as its own thing, a martial arts anime that happens to use Street Fighter characters, it actually works. Street Fighter II Victory got released in the United States on VHS and DVD later, but it never had the cultural impact it deserved. Most Western fans only knew the terrible live-action movie and the okay-ish American cartoon, but in Japan, this series is respected. It's considered one of the better video game anime adaptations from that era. If you can find it, it's worth watching. Just don't expect it to be exactly like the game. Now, before we get to Alpha, we need to talk about the Street Fighter II movie, because this is the one that actually mattered. 1994. Group TAC animated it. Theatrical release in Japan, and it's genuinely one of the best video game anime adaptations ever made. This wasn't a TV series with TV budgets. This was a feature film with real production values. The animation is gorgeous, fluid, detailed, dynamic. The fight choreography is some of the best you'll see in 90s anime. The story follows Bison trying to recruit the world's strongest fighters for his Shadaloo organization while monitoring them via satellite surveillance. Ryu and Ken get pulled into the conflict. Chun-Li seeks revenge for her father's death. Guile leads the military response. What makes this movie work is that it takes the game seriously without being enslaved by it. The characters feel like real people with real motivations. The fights aren't just recreations of game matches, they're actual martial arts battles with weight and consequence. And then there's that scene, Chun-Li versus Vega in her apartment, one of the most iconic fight scenes in anime history. The animation, the choreography, the tension, it's perfect. That scene alone made the movie legendary. The movie also had this brilliant idea. Get Western musicians for the soundtrack, Alice in Chains, Korn. It gave the film this edge that pure Japanese productions didn't have. It was reaching for a global audience. Street Fighter II, the animated movie, got a wide release in the West. It played in theaters. It got VHS and DVD releases. Unlike the TV series, this one actually reached American audiences, and it influenced everything that came after. When people talk about how to adapt fighting games to animation, they point to this movie. It set the standard. The movie proved that video game anime could be theatrical quality. It could have real artistic merit. It could appeal to adults, not just kids. For a generation of Street Fighter fans, this movie is the definitive animated version. Not the American cartoon, not even the TV anime series. This movie captured what the games felt like in a way nothing else has. If you're only going to watch one Street Fighter anime, make it this one. It's not just a good game adaptation, it's a legitimately good martial arts action film that happens to be based on a video game. And then there's Street Fighter Alpha, the animation. This one's different. It's an original video animation, straight to video, and it focuses heavily on specific characters rather than trying to adapt the whole roster. The Alpha series of games had introduced younger versions of the characters and new backstories. This anime tried to explore that. Heavy focus on Ryu's internal struggle with the Dark Hadu, basically the evil power that's trying to corrupt him. The animation is better than the TV series. Higher budget, more fluid action. The fight scenes are genuinely impressive for late 90s OVA work, but it's also darker and more serious. This isn't a fun adventure anime. It's trying to be psychological and dramatic. Ryu dealing with his inner demons. Sakura trying to understand what being a true fighter means. Akuma being terrifying. Street Fighter Alpha never got the distribution that the earlier series did. It was mostly sold in anime specialty shops and online retailers. A lot of Street Fighter fans don't even know it exists, which is a shame because it's actually a pretty good character study wrapped in a fighting game adaptation. If you're into Street Fighter lore and want to see Ryu's character taken seriously, this is the one to watch. It's not perfect. The story is somewhat convoluted, but the animation and fight choreography make up for it. This is what a Street Fighter anime should look like. But before Street Fighter got big anime adaptations, there was Fatal Fury Legend of the Hungry Wolf. came out in 1992, and it's one of the first serious attempts to turn a fighting game into a real anime story. The movie follows Terry Bogard seeking revenge for his father's death against Geese Howard, the crime boss who controls Southtown. It's a revenge story with martial arts action and actual emotional stakes. What makes this interesting is that it came out when video game anime adaptations were still figuring out what they should be. Do you just show characters fighting? Do you try to have a real plot? Legend of the Hungry Wolf chose plot, and it worked. The animation is solid early 90s OVA quality. The fights are well choreographed, and they actually bothered to give the characters personalities beyond their fighting styles. Fatal Fury got 2 sequel movies, Fatal Fury 2 and Fatal Fury the Motion Picture. Each one had bigger budgets and better animation. The motion picture especially has some gorgeous fight scenes and legitimately good animation work, but these movies have mostly been forgotten. They got VHS releases in the US, showed up on anime cable channels occasionally, and then just disappeared into obscurity, which is unfortunate because they're actually really good martial arts anime that happen to be based on fighting games. If you like old school anime action, these are worth tracking down. Fatal Fury proved that you could adapt a fighting game into something with real drama and character development. It set the template that other adaptations would follow, or ignore completely. And here's the thing. Samurai Showdown is one of the weirder fighting game adaptations. The game was set in feudal Japan with samurai and sword fighters, so the anime tried to be a historical drama with supernatural elements. The OVA is only 2 episodes, but it's visually striking. The animation has this painterly quality that fits the historical setting. The sword fights are brutal and well animated, but here's the problem. If you're not already a Samurai Showdown fan, this anime makes no sense. It assumes you know who these characters are and why they're fighting. There's minimal exposition. Samurai Showdown never got wide distribution in the West. Most people never saw it. It represents studios experimenting with how to adapt fighting games and choosing to make it only for existing fans rather than new audiences. Now let's talk about a Capcom classic. Darkstalkers. So, Darkstalkers was Capcom's horror-themed fighting game. Vampires, werewolves, mummies, basically universal monsters as fighting game characters. And in 1997, it got an anime series. It's campy horror mixed with fighting game action mixed with attempts at actual plot. Some episodes are trying to be serious supernatural drama, others are pure comedy. The tone is all over the place. But here's why it became a cult classic. The visual design is fantastic. The characters look great. The animation captures that gothic horror aesthetic perfectly, and when the fights happen, they're genuinely creative. The problem was distribution. Darkstalkers got a limited VHS release in the US. A few episodes aired on TV, but it never got a proper DVD release until years later. Most American fans never saw it. Darkstalkers feels like the kind of anime you only discovered by accident, rented, recorded, or traded. That's part of what made it special. In Japan, it has a bigger following, but even there, it's remembered more as a curiosity than a genuine success. What makes Darkstalkers interesting is that it didn't try to make the game's premise realistic. It embraced the weirdness. Vampires fighting zombies, fighting cat girls. The anime just went with it. Today, Darkstalkers the anime is mostly forgotten, except by hardcore fans. But if you can find it, it's a fascinating time capsule of 90s horror comedy anime mixed with fighting game adaptation. And now let's shift to RPGs. Because Dragon Quest, The Adventure of Dai, is one of the most successful game-to-anime adaptations ever made, and most Western fans have never heard of it. Dragon Quest is massive in Japan, and in 1991, they made an anime series based not on the games directly, but on a manga spin-off. The Adventure of Dai follows a young boy who's basically the chosen one destined to fight the revived Demon King. The original series ran for 46 episodes. It was popular enough that it got a complete remake in 2020 that ran for 100 episodes. In Japan, this is huge. It's a beloved adaptation that introduced a whole generation to Dragon Quest. The characters from Dai's adventure are as iconic as the games themselves. In the West, almost nobody knows it exists. Part of the problem was timing. The original series came out when anime distribution in the United States was still figuring itself out. By the time streaming made everything accessible, Dragon Quest wasn't as popular in the West as it was in Japan. But The Adventure of Dai deserves recognition. It's a genuinely good fantasy adventure anime that respects its source material while telling its own story. The recent remake has gorgeous animation and production values. If you like Dragon Quest and want to see what a successful game-to-anime adaptation looks like, this is it. Just know that you're diving into a 100+ episode commitment with the remake. And now let's talk about Tales of Phantasia. That represents a very specific type of game-to-anime adaptation, the OVA that exists purely for fans of the game. Tales of Phantasia was a beloved JRPG on the Super Famicom and PlayStation. In 2004, it got a 4-episode OVA that adapted key moments from the game's story. The animation is beautiful. Production IG did the work, and they brought serious production values. The character designs are faithful to the game. The action scenes are fluid and well choreographed. But if you haven't played Tales of Phantasia, this OVA makes absolutely no sense. It assumes you know the full story and just want to see specific scenes animated. There's no setup, minimal explanation, just here are the cool parts from the game. For fans of the game, it was exactly what they wanted. For everyone else, it was incomprehensible. Tales of Phantasia represents the bridge between console RPGs and anime. In Japan, there's this whole ecosystem of game-based OVAs that exist just to give fans more content. They're not trying to be standalone stories, they're supplementary material. The OVA never got a wide release outside Japan. It's one of those deep cuts that only hardcore JRPG and anime fans even know exists. But it's a perfect example of how game-to-anime adaptations don't always need to be accessible. Sometimes they're just for the people who already love the source material. And here's Persona Trinity Soul. This anime is fascinating because it's trying to do something ambitious. Expand the Persona universe beyond the games. This isn't an adaptation of Persona 3 or 4. It's an original story set in the same universe, dealing with personas and the supernatural. It's trying to be a mature psychological thriller that happens to be connected to a video game franchise. The series is 26 episodes of dark urban fantasy, characters dealing with trauma, identity, and supernatural powers. It's trying to capture what makes Persona games interesting: the psychological depth, the social commentary, the coming-of-age themes, and it's kind of a mess. The problem is that Trinity Soul wants to be deep and meaningful, but the writing doesn't quite get there. The pacing is slow, the mystery elements drag, and the connection to the games is loose enough that fans felt alienated while newcomers felt confused. But it's not terrible. The animation is solid. Some of the character work is genuinely good, and the attempt to explore the Persona concept outside the games is admirable. Trinity Soul got a decent release in the West, but it never found an audience. Persona fans wanted something closer to the games. Anime fans wanted better writing. Later, Persona 4 got its own anime adaptation that was much more faithful to the game, and much more successful. Trinity Soul became a weird footnote in Persona history. It represents what happens when you try to use a game's concepts without adapting the actual game. Sometimes it works. Here, it didn't quite get there. Before we talk about the 2000s reinvention, let's go back to the original Mega Man anime, because this is one of the most frustrating, almost made it to America stories in game-to-anime history. In 1994, Japan got a Mega Man anime series produced by Capcom and animated by Ruby Spears Productions' Japanese partner studio. Two separate series actually, one focusing on the classic Mega Man, another on Mega Man X. The classic Mega Man series ran for 2 seasons. Dr. Light creates Rock, a helpful robot boy who becomes Mega Man to fight Dr. Wily's robot masters. If you played the 8-bit games, this was those stories animated. Proto Man shows up, Roll is there. The full cast from the games translated directly to anime. The animation quality was solid mid-90s TV anime. Nothing spectacular, but competent. The fight scenes actually tried to replicate how the games felt. Mega Man using different robot master weapons, strategic battles, that classic Mega Man gameplay loop turned into narrative. What made this version interesting was tone. It took itself seriously without being grim. Mega Man dealing with the responsibility of fighting, Dr. Light's ethical questions about creating weapons, the tragedy of robot masters being reprogrammed for evil. The show explored themes the games implied but never fully developed. Then there was Mega Man X, a separate series adapting the Super Nintendo games. Darker tone, more mature themes, X dealing with pacifism versus necessity of violence, Zero as the wildcard, Sigma as a genuinely threatening villain. The X series anime understood what made those games different from classic Mega Man. Both series aired in Japan. Both were successful enough to run their full seasons, and both were completely ignored for American release. Here's what makes this infuriating. At the exact same time these Japanese anime were airing, America got the Ruby Spears Mega Man cartoon, same company involved in production. But the American version was completely different. The Ruby Spears cartoon was pure American Saturday morning fare. Mega Man in a leather jacket, Dr. Light as a bumbling scientist, humor over action, a completely different interpretation that had almost nothing to do with the games beyond character names. And American kids got stuck with that while Japan got actual game-accurate anime. For American Mega Man fans in the mid-90s who knew about the Japanese versions, it was torture. You'd hear about these shows on early internet forums. People who'd lived in Japan or had connections would describe them. There's a real Mega Man anime that actually follows the games, and you couldn't watch it. Some VHS tapes circulated. Fan subs started appearing in the late 90s. If you knew the right people in anime clubs or had connections to import shops, maybe you could see episodes. But it was rare, expensive, and usually terrible quality recordings. The Japanese Mega Man anime represented everything American fans wanted: faithful game adaptation, proper tone, actual respect for the source material. And it was kept from them in favor of a cartoon that felt like it was made by people who'd never played the games. Eventually, much later, fan translations became widely available online. Some episodes got official releases decades after the fact, but in the 90s, this was a Japan-only treasure that American fans could only dream about. It's one of the clearest examples of how game-to-anime adaptations in the 90s were completely different depending on which side of the Pacific you lived on. Japan got faithful adaptations. America got whatever Western studios felt like making. The Japanese Mega Man and Mega Man X anime are actually good. They're not masterpieces, but they're exactly what fans wanted. The games they loved animated properly. And most American fans never got to experience them when they mattered. Devil May Cry is one of those adaptations that should have been huge, and somehow wasn't. The games were stylish, the anime tried to capture that. 12 episodes of Dante taking supernatural bounty hunter jobs while looking cool and being sarcastic. The animation is solid. Studio Madhouse did the production, and they know how to do action. When the fights happen, they're well choreographed and visually impressive. The problem is the pacing. The series is very episodic. Each episode is basically, Dante takes a job, fights demons, makes quips, episode ends. There's minimal overarching plot, very little character development. For fans of the games who just wanted to see Dante being Dante in animated form, it works. The tone is right. The style is right. Dante's personality is accurate, but as a standalone anime, it's forgettable. It doesn't do anything particularly interesting with the premise. It's just competent supernatural action with a charismatic protagonist. Devil May Cry got a DVD release and aired on some cable networks, but it came and went without making much impact. Most people who watched it said, yeah, that was okay, and moved on. It's frustrating because the pieces were there. Great source material, good animation studio, but the execution was too safe, too formulaic. Devil May Cry. The anime is remembered mostly by fans of the games. Everyone else forgot it existed almost immediately. Now let's talk about Sonic, because Sonic's animation history is complicated. In the 90s, Sonic got multiple Western cartoons. Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog was goofy comedy. Sonic Saddam was dark and serious with actual ongoing plot. Sonic Underground had them forming a rock band, all very American, all very different from each other. Then in 2003, Japan made Sonic X, an actual anime. Sonic X ran for 3 seasons, 78 episodes. It aired in Japan, got dubbed for the West, and became the definitive Sonic animated series for a generation of kids. The premise starts simple. Sonic and friends get transported to Earth and have to adapt to human society while fighting Dr. Eggman. But it gets more complex, introducing alien civilizations and space adventures. What makes Sonic X interesting is that it's caught between being a kid's show and trying to have real stakes. Characters actually face consequences. The 3rd season especially gets surprisingly dark for a Sonic cartoon. The show was divisive. Some fans loved it for taking Sonic seriously. Others hated the human character Chris Thorndike, who got way too much screen time. The debate still rages today. But here's what Sonic X did. It replaced all those 90s Western cartoons as the official Sonic show. Kids who grew up in the 2000s, this was their Sonic. Not Saddam, not Adventures. Sonic X. The difference between Sonic's 90s cartoons and Sonic X shows how game-to-animation adaptations changed. The 90s versions were Western studios doing whatever they wanted with the IP. Sonic X was made in Japan with Sega's direct involvement, treating game lore as canon. Sonic X has its problems, pacing issues, Chris Thorndike, inconsistent animation quality, but it proved Sonic could work as anime, paving the way for later projects like the Sonic movies and newer animated series. Whether you love it or hate it, Sonic X was massive, and it permanently shifted. And then there's Castlevania, which changed everything. When Netflix announced an animated Castlevania series in 2017, expectations were low. Video game adaptations are usually terrible. Animated Netflix shows were still proving themselves. Then the 1st season dropped. 4 episodes. Dark, violent, mature animation that actually respected the source material while telling its own story. Castlevania worked because it didn't try to directly adapt the games. It took the lore, Dracula, Belmonts, vampires, Wallachia, and built a complete narrative around it. It's a medieval dark fantasy with excellent writing and brutal action. The animation from Powerhouse Animation is gorgeous. The fight choreography is some of the best in Western animation, and the show isn't afraid to be genuinely dark and violent in ways that feel earned, not gratuitous. What makes Castlevania revolutionary is that it proved game-to-anime adaptations could work for Western audiences if you treated the source material seriously and hired talented people. The series ran for 4 seasons, concluded its main story, and spawned a spin-off, Castlevania Nocturne. It became Netflix's most successful video game adaptation until Arcane. For older gamers who grew up playing Castlevania, the show felt like validation. Someone finally understood what made these games special and translated it to animation properly. Castlevania opened the door for other serious game adaptations. It showed that you could be faithful to the spirit of a game without just copying the gameplay. Castlevania didn't just adapt a game, it redeemed an entire genre. Now let's talk about this one. Galaxy Fraulein Yuna. Galaxy Fraulein Yuna was a Japanese computer and PlayStation game, a mix of visual novel, RPG, and dating sim with a magical girl aesthetic. Think Sailor Moon meets sci-fi comedy. It got an OVA series in 1995, and it's absolutely bonkers. The premise, a high school girl becomes a space hero and has to save the galaxy. There's comedy, magical girl transformations, sci-fi battles, and Japan-specific humor that doesn't translate. The OVA is charming in that mid-90s anime way. Bright colors, exaggerated expressions, fast-paced comedy, but it's completely impenetrable if you don't know Japanese pop culture from that era. Galaxy Fraulein Yuna never got any Western release. It's completely forgotten outside very specific anime collectors collector circles, but it represents this whole category of game-to-anime adaptations that were never meant to leave Japan. Weird, niche content for a very specific audience. Gungrave is one of the most interesting cases on this list because the anime is significantly better than the game. Gungrave was a PlayStation 2 third-person shooter. Stylish, but not particularly memorable. It came and went without making much impact in gaming. But then the anime adaptation came out. 26 episodes of crime drama with supernatural elements, and it's legitimately great television. Here's what makes Gungrave work. It completely reimagines the premise. The game was just guy with big guns shoots monsters. The first half of the series barely has any action. It's pure mafia drama. Two friends rising through the criminal underworld. The characters are fully developed. The relationships feel real. The tragedy is earned. Then the second half brings in the supernatural elements and the action. But by that point, you're so invested in these characters that the genre shift works. Gungrave, the anime, is better than the game it's based on. And more people have seen the anime than ever played the game. It exists as its own complete story. This is the opposite of most game adaptations, where the game is iconic and the anime is a curiosity. Here, the anime is the definitive version. Sakura Wars is unique. Sakura Wars was a Japanese strategy RPG mixed with dating sim, mixed with steampunk aesthetic, mixed with theater troupe management. It's a very Japanese franchise that doesn't really have a Western equivalent. The anime OVA and later TV series tried to capture that energy. Steampunk 1920s Tokyo, young women who are both theater performers and mecha pilots fighting supernatural threats. It's simultaneously a period piece, a mecha show, a character drama, and a supernatural action series. The tone shifts between comedy, romance, and serious battle sequences constantly. The animation is beautiful. The character designs are iconic in Japan. The concept is fascinating, combining theater culture with mecha battles in a steampunk historical setting. But it's also incredibly niche. If you're not already into Japanese cultural references and willing to embrace the weird premise, Sakura Wars makes no sense. The franchise is huge in Japan. Multiple games, anime series, stage shows, and more. In the West, almost nobody knows it exists. Sakura Wars represents game-to-anime adaptations that are never going to translate across cultures. The appeal is too specific, too rooted in Japanese media traditions. But for people who love it, they love it. It has a passionate cult following that appreciates its unique combination of elements that shouldn't work together but somehow do. But now we need to talk about the Zelda cartoon. Yes, cartoon, not actually an anime. But I have to talk about this one because it's historically important and also kind of terrible. In 1989, The Legend of Zelda got a 13-episode animated series that aired as part of the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. It was early, it was ambitious, it was also deeply, deeply weird. Link is portrayed as this cocky, girl-crazy hero who constantly hits on Princess Zelda. He literally says, "Excuse me, princess," as a catchphrase. Zelda is competent, but constantly exasperated by Link's behavior. The episodes are short, about 15 minutes each. The animation is limited TV cartoon quality. The stories are basic save-the-day from Ganon plots. But here's why it matters. This was Nintendo's first attempt to expand Zelda beyond games, and they immediately established that Link should be a character with personality, not a silent protagonist. The cartoon has been widely mocked. "Excuse me, princess" became a meme. People point to it as an example of how not to adapt video games. But it also proved there was appetite for Zelda in other media. It showed that you could tell stories in Hyrule beyond the games themselves. Decades later, we're still waiting for a proper Zelda anime. But that weird 1989 cartoon was the first step, however stumbling, towards Zelda becoming a multimedia franchise. And then there's Pokemon, the case where the anime became bigger than the games. Pokemon launched in Japan in 1996 as Game Boy games. The anime started in 1997, and it became a global phenomenon that changed everything. The games were successful. The anime made Pokemon a cultural juggernaut. Kids who'd never touched the games knew who Pikachu was because of the anime. Ash Ketchum became as iconic as the games themselves. "Gotta catch 'em all" went from a game mechanic to a worldwide catchphrase. What makes Pokemon interesting is that it's not really an adaptation. The anime tells its own story with its own continuity. Ash exists only in the anime in that time. The games and anime support each other, but don't directly adapt each other. Pokemon proved that game-to-anime could work at massive commercial scale if you understood your audience and built a complete multimedia empire. The anime is still running, over 1,200 episodes and counting. Multiple movies. Ash's story finally concluded in 2023 after 25 years. Pokemon is the exception, not the rule. Most game-to-anime adaptations don't become global phenomena, but Pokemon showed what's possible when everything clicks. So, what makes a good game-to-anime adaptation, and what's your favorite? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.